Welcome to Ryan's Running Reviews in partnership with Roadrunner Sports, and today we have a very special comparison video. We're taking a look at the redesigned Asics Cumulus 25, comparing it to last year's version, the Cumulus 24, and then we also have the Nimbus 25, which has the same kind of midsole foam as the redesigned Cumulus. So let's run with it. Now, before we get started, I do want to say that these shoes were provided to me by Roadrunner Sports. However, I don't have a chance to preview this video, and the file synopsis is my own. I'd also like to say, please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing. Here we go. Now, if you're not familiar with the Asics running shoe lineup, I don't blame you. They have a lot of different models, and it can be confusing. The Cumulus, the shoe we're taking a look at today, is their premium flagship neutral daily trainer, which essentially means it does a little bit everything. It's meant to be a versatile training option. Now, the reason we're taking a look at the 24 and comparing it to this year's version is it's a complete redesign from head to toe. It is nothing like its predecessor. And then the reason we have the Nimbus here is the Nimbus is basically the max cushion training option within the Asics lineup. So it's basically the thicker version of the Cumulus. As far as price goes, it was $130 last year. This year, it's going to be $140, so a $10 increase. And then for $20 more, you can get the Nimbus at $160. With this complete redesign, the Cumulus 25 does give us 2 more millimeters of stack height compared to the 24. We have 37.5 in the heel, 29.5 in the forefoot for that same 8 millimeter drop. The Nimbus, the thicker option, gives you 4 more millimeters of stack height with 41.5 in the heel, 33.5 in the forefoot for the same millimeter drop. So all options have an 8 millimeter drop, but we get 2 more millimeters compared to last year and 4 more millimeters if you want to move up to the Nimbus. And even though we have a larger midsole with more stack height, we actually lose a substantial amount of weight, which I am pleasantly surprised by. The Cumulus 25 comes in at 9.4 ounces, which is much less compared to the 10.1 last year, and almost a full ounce less compared to the 10.3 here on the Nimbus 25. Moving on to the upper, we'll start off by comparing this year's version to last year's. We'll move the Nimbus off to the side for now. And even though this is a complete redesign, it feels somewhat similar compared to last year with a couple small tweaks. We still have the engineered jacquard mesh, keeps your foot contained, incredibly comfortable. It gets the job done, has that Asics build quality. And if you've tried an Asics shoe, I think this will be a familiar experience. The one thing I don't necessarily love about kind of the engineered jacquard mesh is it's not the most breathable. Had the same issue last year. It's okay. It's not the best, especially as we get into some of these warmer months. The difference between the 25 and the 24 is I think the 25 is a bit more accommodating. It has some more room for the midfoot and forefoot. So if you have a wider foot or seen a bit more space, I think you'll like the fit here on the 25. Both tongues are gusseted. However, the tongue on the 25 just feels a bit more plush. They also decided to add this tongue pull tab at the top. It's kind of this rubberized, kind of flexible material. Looks kind of cool, has some interesting branding. I don't think it really moves the needle one way or the other, but it's there nonetheless. Now, both tongues worked very well. I like the fact that they're both gusseted, keeps them from moving around, and they just feel very much like an Asics experience. Moving to the back of the shoe in the ankle and Achilles area, the 24 does have a more plush feel as there is more foam back here, just has a little bit more padding. They pared that down here on the 25, I assume to save some weight as the shoe came down almost a full ounce. The 25 is not bad, feels incredibly comfortable. I thought the heel lock was excellent. Again, very much like an Asics upper. Great lockdown, feels very comfortable, excellent build quality. It just has less padding compared to the 24. So if that's something you missed on the 24, you'll be sad to see it's gone here on the 25. If you're someone who likes some more moderate level of cushioning like I do, you'll be happy here with the 25 because I'd rather have that weight trade-off than just a tiny bit more of cushioning. And with that, we'll bring in the Nimbus 25 and compare the uppers here as they do feel rather different. While both shoes are true to size and have similar fits, there are a couple key differentiating factors. The first is the upper material. On the Nimbus, it's this very closed off knit fabric, which is not breathable at all. It's comfortable, just not breathable. It does run very warm. Here on the Cumulus, like we talked about before, engineered jacquard mesh with okay breathability. The tongues are completely different. I personally really like the stretch knit tongue here on the Nimbus. Has large holes, allows for some ventilation, and I just found it to be incredibly comfortable and kind of fun and easy to slide your foot in and out of this shoe. And you do have that kind of tongue pull tab at the top, which is about the only similarity it shares with the Cumulus, which, like we talked before, has the tongue pull tab, but is very traditional, has a solid amount of padding, and is fully gusseted. They are both fully gusseted too, so that's another similarity. But either way, the tongue here is incredibly stretchy and you can practically see right through it, while on the Cumulus, it's going to be more traditional with more padding. Moving to the back of the shoe, they both have pull tabs. However, the one on the Nimbus is much stretchier and much larger, easier to pull, kind of like that one, compared to the more traditional one here on the Cumulus. The Nimbus also has this kind of knit collar around the ankle and didn't really notice it. I think it's something they could probably lose on future versions to save on weight. And then as far as the padding here in the ankle and Achilles region, feels about the same, maybe a slight edge to the Nimbus, but they both work rather well. As far as the lockdown and fit, I think they're both excellent. You do have maybe just a tiny bit more give because of that stretch knit upper here on the Nimbus, but I thought the lockdown was great. It's just a little bit better on the Cumulus because there's no elastic material and it keeps your foot very well contained. And we are now going to bring back in the Cumulus, swap it out for the Nimbus, so we can talk about the midsole as it got a complete overhaul this year. Now, the Cumulus 24 is actually more complex than it looks. It has a FlyteFoam Blast as its primary foam in the midsole. It's rather bouncy. Then you also have this dark blue foam that wraps around the lateral side and up to the medial side. That is FlyteFoam. It's more dense and helps give stability. And then you also have the gel on the heel and a small gel dot under the forefoot. So 3 different cushioning technologies that has been simplified down to 2 cushioning technologies. We now have FlyteFoam Blast Plus, which is 15% lighter and softer, as well as being 12% bouncier. And we have a ton more of it, 2 more millimeters of stack height, and then just more volume to the midsole itself. You can just tell it's a bulkier midsole if you just kind of line them up and look at it. Now, this does have a trick up its sleeve, something called Pure Gel. It was added on the Nimbus. It's a small piece of gel that is no longer in the heel. It's underneath your heel. So it's just meant to absorb shock, help with impact protection. I think Asics had a video where they dropped an egg and the egg did not shatter because of that small piece of gel. And that is placed, again, directly under your heel. It's just a small little slab. I'll put a picture on the screen so you can see exactly what I am talking about. Now, in my experience when using these shoes, I didn't notice the Pure Gel. You just can't feel it, if you will. I'm sure it does make a difference if you're able to measure shock absorption running in comedy. I'm sure it helps, but you just can't feel it under your foot, but it is there. So it's just a nice little, I guess, added bonus of the gel not being in the heel, which I was always kind of confused by, and I'm happy to see they just put it directly under your foot. So what does this new midsole feel like? Well, I think Asics actually delivers on bringing a softer, bouncier midsole compound here. That's very evident once you slide your foot into the shoe. However, that was not what initially surprised me. But what really surprised me about the 25 is it got bulkier and larger while also feeling lighter. It's a weird sensation, but it becomes apparent when you kind of line these two shoes up here, and you can just tell the 25 has much more midsole volume to it. And the other thing too is it has a lot more surface area to the outsole as well. Now, why did they do this? Why did they bulk up the midsole so much? Well, they added 2 more millimeters, but I think the overall additional volume was to try to help stabilize things. So you have that really wide platform to land on, gives you some more stability. Then there's also some contouring to the midsole foam itself where your foot sits a little bit lower in the midsole. So you have some small, very small walls of foam on the lateral and medial side. So I wouldn't call this the most stable neutral shoe ever, but it does offer a moderate amount of support. I will say for being a bulkier option, it does a solid job of kind of handling a wide variety of paces. It takes a little bit to get used to if you want to push the pace and just kind of get used to that extra bulk, especially if you're coming from the predecessor. And now we will bring in the Nimbus 25 and compare it to the Cumulus 25 as they both have FlyteFoam Blast Plus foam midsoles and Pure Gel in the heel. So there is a very similar vibe between these two shoes, while the Nimbus does have 4 more millimeters of stack height, so it's a slightly thicker option. And something interesting I found is if you line up these two shoes, you'll notice that the Cumulus actually has a wider outsole pattern compared to the Nimbus, even though the Nimbus has more stack height. So I just kind of thought that was interesting. You would expect the larger shoe to have a larger platform, and that's not the case here. I did find the Cumulus to be more stable again just because you have the contouring and that wider base, and there's just a little bit less of that soft, bouncy foam like we see here on the Nimbus. Now, in my opinion, the line between these two models is getting quite blurry, at least with regard to the midsole. They both have, again, FlyteFoam Blast Plus, and when I put one shoe on each foot, they felt awfully similar. Yes, the Nimbus is going to be your all-out Asics cushioned shoe. I think the Superblast is the only one truly above it with regard to like the daily training, but it's only 4 more millimeters of stack height, and considering the Cumulus is a full ounce less, I didn't think it was that massive of a difference. So if you really want all the plushiness in the world, at least with regard to daily trainers, check out this or the Superblast. But I think the Cumulus isn't, again, not too far behind with regard to the cushioning, and considering it's only about 9.3, 9.4 ounces, I think that's a solid deal, and I really enjoyed that FlyteFoam Blast Plus experience in this setup. The outsoles are quite similar. They're relatively smooth, give you a solid amount of grip on more conventional surfaces like asphalt, concrete, and whatnot. However, it becomes interesting when you compare it to last year's version, the 24, which had a lot more rubber. Now this makes sense. The 25 lost a ton of weight, and part of that is because it has less of rubber to it. I'll also say because the 24 has these deep lugs or kind of deep grooves in between the rubber sections, you had better or more versatile grip, I'll say, that allowed you to go on different surfaces compared to this more smooth texture here on the 25. So keep that in mind. Depends where you're running. If you're just using this for true, road running, I think that'll work quite well. But if you do want to take it on different terrains, I think the 24 might have a more versatile traction pattern. So let me know down in the comments, what do you think of this massive Cumulus redesign? I would love to hear from you. Well, I'm Ryan from Ryan's Running Reviews, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.